A pleasure to meet y'all at last, and welcome back to Honest J Nowak Super Foam Flying. And today, Super Foam Flying sure is, in fact, getting quickly put together. Yeah. If you aren't very familiar with how big my Nerf-related content had been over the past 15 years or so, then you might as well go ahead and recheck it, because if by that point that you wouldn't probably know exactly what I'm talking about, then well, here is a good example of all that. I have myself an Elite Hyperfire. But of course, I'm just going to pause right there for a moment and just let you take in the knowledge that this is apparently called Hyperfire. It's an Elite blaster, not a dart tag blaster, which actually was called the Hyperfire back in 2005, but this was released in 2016, 11 years later. That is more than enough time for Nerf to come up with a different name for something like this, rather than rehash it. I mean, what is the actual Hyperfire? Is it this, or is it the dart tag blaster from 05? Who even knows at this point? Because considering how huge of a controversy this seems to be, I mean, there's a reason why I give these blasters different names. To stem away from the confusion and to bring up some originality to the line itself. That's why I call this the Quickfire. Yeah, Quickfire. The simplest change can make all the difference. That's probably a good lesson to hold on to for the rest of your lives. But anyways, aside from the name, this blaster itself, of all the blasters I've gotten from 2016, sure does have itself quite a lot to talk about. First of all, this one in particular has itself an 18 dart clip, which I've filled to the top right here. And what we're going to do is we're going to try and blaze through all of this. This blaster does in fact take a few D batteries, which the compartment's on this side. And of course you can see the right back end of the stock is very faded compared to the rest of the orange that's on here. Apparently the only orange plastic that's faded and blemished in a way is this. There's also some chips and cracks on it for some odd reason. Probably a different kind of plastic, but anyways, here we go with the Quickfire's full auto capability. And with that, the clip itself is pretty much empty. It does take a little bit of agitation just to get this thing to rise up completely, but in the end I really feel like that's probably all I'd have to talk about based on the Quickfire itself. But there's a few things that I could probably mention as well. The sort of ergonomic design that I could probably mention right here. It sure is probably average by most means, but from your perspective you probably can't tell how good it might actually feel against me. The stock itself probably would be one thing that I might give out a change, because it's a bit small and doesn't necessarily act a bit more like a comfortable spot to rest on my shoulder, but yet with the front side and the grip itself, which has several holes in it for all the fingers to go into, can pretty much be helpful by any means, especially if you're not necessarily wanting to have a blaster that is uncomfortable yet can be smaller, such as the Otter QX4 right here. But aside from QS4 blasters as a whole, this blaster sure does have some good ergonomics. The color palette, of course, is also pretty good, with blue, orange, dark gray, and white, as well as some others, pretty much. We also can't forget about how this blaster actually fires off with full auto capabilities, and that's simply by the usage of a tread. That's right. If you remember from a few other reviews I've talked about, you would know that there's a little tread that can be used as a way to push the darts into the flywheels, mostly at a fast rate, which is in fact very similar to several other blasters that I've reviewed so far. I've of course talked about the Regulator, which was in fact the only Nerf blaster at the time to have a burst capability in addition to having single auto and full auto capabilities. So the Quickfire itself has quite a nice usage, being that this actually was a bit of a precursor to the tread design in terms of acting as a pusher for the darts to go into the flywheels. The Nemesis, the Chaos, and a handful of others would also utilize the tread pusher sort of technique. But otherwise, I'm not necessarily finding a whole lot left to talk about, so I guess we'll call it a day. I mean, there's also this little tack rail on top, but it barely does jack, so that's a pretty good blaster, but the Quickfire does leave a lot of questions. Mostly because of the name, mostly because of a handful of things, and I also do feel like that with the abundance of other things in mind to check up on, there probably will be also a ton of other conversations that might get started because of all this, and who even knows what we might eventually find out as well. I most certainly won't know for the time being, but until then, I guess I won't have much else to say about all this. So if you want to see more, go down to my channel, then make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, follow me on social media, and stay on the Hollywood side.